everyone. In this video, we'll wrap up our discussion of the renal system by describing the ureters, the urinary bladder, and the urethra. So we'll just draw a cartoon of them quickly, and we can see that there are two ureters that extend to the bladder, and then the urethra extends from the bladder to the outside of the body. So urine travels from the renal pelvis into the ureters on either side, and the ureters, like the kidneys, are also retroperitoneal. They're about 12 inches long, and let's just take a look at some of the cell structures that are present. So there are three distinct layers of the ureters. The inside is the mucosa, which is basically made of transitional epithelium. Transitional epithelium, remember, is epithelium that is able to change shape to accommodate stretch. And then there are two layers of muscle, smooth muscle, the longitudinal layer and the circular layer. And then the outermost segment is fibrous connective tissue that's actually continuous with the renal capsule. Urine travels down the ureters by peristalsis, same peristalsis that we described in the GI tract. So this is a positive feedback loop, starts with distension as the urine enters into the ureter, which is going to cause stretch and activation of sensory receptors, and then consequently we'll have contraction or activation of smooth muscle in order to propel the urine forward. So then the urine will arrive in the bladder, and the bladder is a hollow muscular organ, and it's able to store urine. That's its primary function. And it typically holds about 500 mLs of urine, but in extreme circumstances it can hold up to about 1 liter. And we notice that there are some slits in the posterior of the bladder. The slits are actually the points of entry of the urine from the ureters into the bladder. And basically their function, because they're closed unless the urine is pushed through them, they will prevent backflow of urine into the ureters when the bladder contracts. So if we think of the bladder contraction as increasing the pressure inside of it, we don't want to have backflow of the urine up the ureters towards the renal pelvis. That would just complicate everything. Now, the bladder is made of 3 layers of smooth muscle. The notable muscle structure of the bladder is called detrusor muscle. And basically, when the detrusor muscle contracts, it will compress the bladder and expel the urine. And just like the transitional epithelium of the inside of the ureters, we have transitional epithelium on the inside of the bladder as well. Next, we'll describe the urethra. So just as we have the external and internal anal sphincters, we also have internal and external urethral sphincters. So the internal urethral sphincter is under involuntary control, and the external urethral sphincter is under voluntary control. So in order to have urination, we have to have relaxation of the external urethral sphincter first, and then subsequently we'll have relaxation of the internal urethral sphincter, and then urination will actually be able to occur. The female urethra is about 1 to 1.5 inches in length, and that's actually, because it's so short, leads to many more opportunities for a urinary tract infection or invasion of bacteria into the urethra and then into the bladder. And the male urethra is closer to 7 to 8 inches in length. And the one thing we want to mention about the male urethra is that it's also surrounded by the prostate. And so in situations where the prostate is enlarged, such as benign prostate hyperplasia, can actually compress the urethra and make it more difficult to expel the urine. So it can actually lead to urinary retention. Now let's consider the micturition reflex. So micturition is another word for urination, and another word for it as well is voiding. So all three of these terms mean the same thing. So we'll just take a look at our little person with kidneys, and we'll obviously draw in the brain. And so let's take a look at the process that's going to occur here. So when about 200 milliliters of urine enters the bladder will become distended, and this distension is going to activate sensory receptors, something on the order of mechanoreceptors, something that's going to recognize the stretch, and this stretch is going to generate action potentials that will travel to the spinal cord, where we'll have synapse on other neurons. So first we'll actually synapse on the parasympathetic neurons, so parasympathetic preganglionic fiber, And the parasympathetic neurons will generate action potentials to cause contraction of the bladder. And that contraction actually can increase the distension, and so we can create the same positive feedback loop that we saw with expulsion of feces. Also, at the synapse of the spinal cord, we're going to synapse with other afferent neurons, and these afferent neurons will relay the message to the brain so that there is conscious awareness of the need to urinate. So if relaxation of the external urethral sphincter occurs in response to this loop of distension, stretch, contraction, and distension, along with the conscious awareness, taking into consideration all those elements, if the external urethral sphincter is relaxed, we'll get urination. However, if it's not a convenient time to urinate, then there will be no relaxation of the external urethral sphincter, and so consequently, we'll have actually relaxation of the detrusor muscle instead, and so the process will just recycle in about an hour, and this will continue until a point that the bladder is so distended and full of urine that it becomes uncomfortable and not so possible for the bladder to hold additional urine. Alright, so that actually concludes our explanation of the ureters, the bladder, and the urethra. It's definitely simpler than all of the information that's conveyed about the kidneys and the nephron structures, but we still need all these structures in order for the process of urination to become complete. So, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.